Someone said we should watch this video, What is Wrong with CS2? It's a 3.8k subscriber channel, and it's got 50k views. Do you guys have any idea how hard that is? It might be a really good video. I can't lie. I can't lie. Okay, chat, let's take a look, and we'll react to what's wrong with CS2.
I love CS.
Same.
It's more tactical than anything I've ever played. The mechanics are so crisp and satisfying. And it's so
CS:GO.
competitive where every time you lose, it's because you didn't play well enough. It's not down to your teammates.
In CS:GO.
At least that was true back in CS:GO. And anyone who's played a lot of CS:GO and now some CS2 can tell that CS2 doesn't kind of feel right. The game's more random. It feels less crisp and it's much less tactical. I'll get into why I think that's the case during this video, but ultimately, I want CS2 to be better. And for that to happen, I need to answer a single question. What exactly?
Okay, I'm just gonna say this. A lot of people are very sick and tired of me crying on Twitter about CS. It's from the same motivation. I understand that people see negativity over and over and over again and they go, fuck this guy. I get it. It's the same reason I don't read the news. Because I don't want to know all the negative shit going on in the world because it makes me negative. So I get it. I get that seeing me cry about the same issues with the game for the 200th time is annoying. I understand. But I just want the game to be good. Genuinely, I just want the game to be good. That's all it is.
To be better. And for that to happen, I need to answer a single question. What exactly is wrong with CS2? Let's go through the problems with the game in exact terms and suggestions on how I would fix those problems. But by the end of the video, I will devolve into ranting and baseless speculation on why Valve have made the choices they have.
I love ranting.
There's a central theme around my criticism, which is based, funnily enough, around the words of Gabin.
Where you'd be sitting in a design review and somebody say, that's not realistic. And you're like, okay, what does that have to, like, explain to me why that's interesting, because in the real world, I have to write up lists of stuff I have to go to the grocery store to buy. And I've never thought to myself that realism is fun. I go play games to have fun.
True.
And so we had to come up with some notion of what fun was. We knew it was an ad hoc definition, and it was the degrees to which the game recognizes and responded to the player's choices and actions. The point I would make is, if I go up to a wall and shoot it, to me, it feels like the wall is ignoring me. I'm getting a narcissistic injury when the world is ignoring me. So does this, like, to me, I was trying to convey to the user a sense of, yes, you were making choices. Yes, you were progressing, which meant the game had to acknowledge that back to you.
And I also think it's important in a game like this that like your skills are rewarded and you feel like, yes, you have an impact. It's why I gravitate to Counter-Strike as much as I do and not League of Legends. Because in League of Legends, if I'm playing Z mid and I'm fucking gapping my enemy going 5-0, then I should be rewarded for that. And I am in higher stats and being on my way to winning the game. But that is all for nothing if my piece of shit clad top laner is dropping 13 kills to the mundo. I will never be able to kill that guy the entire game. I can't make the difference to win that game anymore. But in CS, if my teammates are dog shit and they keep losing B side, I can say, hey, you guys go play 4 on A. I will 1v9 B side and I can win. And I've done that 100 times. Because even though my enemy has 30 kills and 12 deaths, it doesn't give him 400 HP and an AK that shoots harder. He is still just as mortal as me. And that's always what's made me gravitate towards CS. It feels like my action and my skill level matters. My creativity and my timing and my understanding matters. So it's same thing here.
Do you want to buy a... You can do it on CS Money. On CS Money, you get the fastest trades on the market, low prices recently made even lower, and a wide selection of over 100,000 skins. You can buy and sell with PayPal, crypto, or trade your old skins for new ones. CS Money also has a market section with peer-to-peer trading, as well as an instant cash-out feature. Check them out with the link in the description.
If you shoot at a wall, there have to be decals. If you kill a bunch of Marines, the Marines have to run away from you, right? You have to have this sense of the game acknowledging and responding to the choices and actions and progressions that you've made. Otherwise, it loses any sort of impact.
So in that clip, Gabin's talking about how reinforcement matters, how the game needs to be responsive to player actions. And my arguments for changes to CS2 will all center around that point, that responsiveness and reinforcement do matter. And all the biggest failings of CS2 are related in some way to how unresponsive the game can be. The movement feels floaty, and therefore unresponsive.
Yep.
The shooting in CS2 is much harder to tell when your bullets actually land. and therefore you're always later to respond to what's happening on your screen.
Yep.
The models are just more difficult to read, and if they're more difficult to read, they're more difficult to respond to.
Yep.
Even the grenade throwing is just more delayed than it was in CSGO.
I've been harping on the grenade throwing since the game came out, and people have been telling me non-stop that I'm wrong. I've made this comment 100 times. FaZe loses the last round of the Shanghai Major on Dust 2 because of this nade inconsistency. When Brokey goes to smoke tunnels, and I think Brokey is one of the most underwhelming players in Tier 1 play. When Brokey goes to smoke tunnels, after he throws it, after he lets go of mouse 1, he strafes to the left, because what happens when you throw a grenade in the open? You want to get out of the way so people can't peek you while you have a grenade throwing, right? So he strafes to get out of the way, but because of how the game acts now, when you let go of the mouse isn't when you actually throw it. It is you let go, there's a slight delay, and then the grenade goes out. So the input after you throw the grenade still matters for the grenade trajectory. And that is such a big part of why the game feels like shit to play now. And it's one of the things that also makes it inconsistent. And when it's inconsistent, it feels unresponsive, which is the same argument that my guy here is making. And one thing I have a slight feeling he won't touch on in this video, because this is kind of like more of a niche thing, is another thing that furthers into responsiveness and reinforcement is design language. And this is something I don't see anyone talk about. It's really just me talking about this. I know I've shown this to a lot of you guys before. We all know how in this game, all of these like small ledges and nooks and crannies that mean something for how a grenade will bounce, right? Like if you try to throw a grenade like this, and you're unlucky and you throw it like that, then it's gonna bounce back at you, right? Some people think that's a good thing. I think that's a horribly bad thing. But then explain to me why does this window make it bounce back, but this window doesn't? Can someone explain to me the design language that's being given here to the player? Because if every window, if every nook and cranny did that, then it's one thing. But it is at complete random. You see that? This exact part of the window will do it. Maybe this one too. No. But this window will do it. Right? And by the same extension, this little brick here has ruined so many B defenses, because in the heat of the moment, someone has thrown a smoke like this, and it bounces back at you. Right? Now, that is fine if that is every brick in the game, but it's not every brick in the game. Actually, quite a lot of them are missing anything at all. Like all of these. All of these are a flat wall. None of these stones matter. So there's this inconsistent language of design that I think really makes the game bad. And then when you go up here, all of a sudden it matters again. Do you see what I mean, chat? Do you guys see the problem with this? This is still a flat wall right here. This is a flat wall. But up here, it's no longer a flat wall. So this is the same type of inconsistency in design language that makes the game feel bad to play. Feels horrible.
I'll go more in depth on each of those topics, and there are far more topics than that.
I don't know if he's going to cover that, but like it is...
The game is more unresponsive than CSGO.
Stuff like this bothers me a lot with CS2.
As I can, with the best ideas I can come up with on how to fix each of the problems. And the first issue I want to talk about is the movement. The most common complaint about CS2 movement are the words floaty or heavy. To which I've seen people complain, oh, that doesn't mean anything, you need to give better feedback, blah, 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 blah. No, that is good enough feedback. I agree. Players are not game developers. They don't understand the jargon. Anyone who's spent 5 minutes in a game development engine playing with physics can tell you exactly what heavy or floaty means. Heavy just means a slow acceleration value. Floaty just means a slow deceleration value. There's one more variable in this equation of movement, which is the initial velocity applied. So I had a theory that it takes longer to reach that 250 max velocity speed in CS2 than it does in CSGO. And it turns out I was wrong, kind of. But what I did find out is just as revealing as to why movement feels so heavy and floaty. So here's what I did. I went into CSGO, opened an empty offline server, put in this command, recorded the footage at 30 frames per second, then I noted down the velocity at each frame and put it on a graph. I repeated that whole thing for CS2 and did it all twice to get 2 datasets for each game. Is this perfect testing? No. Is it incredibly accurate?
Good enough.
Not really. Is it good enough for my purposes? I think so I'm just going to go with it. So here's what I found out. The blue and the red is CS2 data, the orange and green is CSGO data, and the movement key was pressed on frame 2. First of all, my theory was kind of right. In CS2, you do reach max velocity 1 frame later than you do in CSGO, which is roughly 33 milliseconds. But I don't think that's the biggest problem that I spotted on this graph. It's not that significant to me. The most interesting point to me was that on the first frame when the movement key is pressed, the value called initial velocity, in CSGO, it's 36 velocity-ish. In CS2, the 2 values I got were 7 and 2, which is much lower than CSGO.
Damn.
Now that heavy feeling people have been talking about, here it is, that number. You're slower on the key press in CS2 than you were in Go by a significant amount. That
that's how easy it is, bro.
needs to be bumped up quite a bit, and it causes so many problems with the game. I'm going to move on to the rest of the graph before I get too bogged down in that. So to recap the acceleration problem. In CS2, you're slower.
This will impact a lot of things, by the way. This will impact stuff like peak acceleration. It will impact stuff like jiggle peaking, which is why nowadays you see people do the jump strafe for jiggle peaking. Yeah, micro jiggles are so inaccurate because of this. So it changes how the game plays. And when you hear people like me, the fucking boomers of Counter-Strike, complain about how the game isn't a skill reliant anymore, it's shit like this. Because to me, this translates to the mechanics have been dumbed down and you are now easier to hit and you're put more on the same level as someone with bad mechanics. And I genuinely do believe this. It's not something I'm saying just to rage bait or to like clip farm. I genuinely do believe this. You know what I mean? I think it's a shame that the game is this way now. Fucking Subtick, bro. I swear to God, bro. Fucking Subtick, man.
Until you've hit max velocity, which you will hit 33 milliseconds later than you would have in CSGO. And the initial velocity you have when you press the movement key is much lower. Next, I tackled the same thing but for deceleration, but after 1 dataset for CSGO and 1 dataset for CS2, I honestly couldn't see that large of a difference. So I don't think that the floaty feeling is from any specific issue with regular deceleration. I think it's primarily to do with the fact that counter-strafing in CS2 is much worse. What do I mean by this? Well, counter-strafing is just accelerating in the opposite direction to stop sooner. And with a weaker acceleration in CS2, it's obviously going to take longer to stop than it would have in CSGO, which is the main source of that floaty feeling in my opinion. The testing I did for deceleration was obviously a shorter duration, and maybe with more datasets and more precise tests I could find a difference between CSGO deceleration and CS2 deceleration, but it just isn't as important.
CSGO movement so clean still, bro.
With initial velocity and the time to reach max velocity. And I'll get to the specifics of how this has impacted gunfights and the meta of the micro in CS later, because it's an all-encompassing large topic.
I like this video already.
This legendary play by Rops, where he's outplaying opponents with precise movements, choices of angles, pinpoint accuracy, it would just be completely impossible in CS2. And I think the game is worse off for it.
Yeah, it is. It is. So when people like me talk about how, and even the pros will say this as well. If you ever caught a pro at an after party or something like that and you spoke to them about like the state of CS, they would tell you the same thing. The pros feel the same way. They feel like not necessarily like the skill ceiling has gone down, maybe a little bit. That's not the problem. The problem is that the skill floor is so much higher now. So the gap between what makes someone good or great or even bad and good is so much shorter. It's why when you see someone play someone so obviously bad, they will die to them more than they would before. Ropes once said in a video that the movement is the same. I mean, you can arguably see here that it isn't. Ropes also doesn't really like playing KZ as much anymore. I've spoken to a lot of pros at events, and none of them like CS2. None of them like CS2. I'm not going to say names. I'm just going to say none of them like CS2. They don't have passion for this game anymore. It's their job.
The slow movement acceleration is such a huge problem, I literally cannot understate it. It impacts 90% of the problems in the game. I'll go through them all, because I know that if you're not playing the game at high level, it might be hard to see. But to wrap up on how I would fix this problem, it's simple. Just up the values for initial velocity, acceleration, and deceleration. Look, I went in an empty server and messed around with the SV accelerate value, put it up slightly from 5.5, which is the default, to 6, it already feels a bit better. It's not perfect because I don't know how to change that initial velocity applied value, which is probably a big part of the problem, and 6 is probably slightly too high, but you get my point. Give me a few hours and a couple PCs, one with CSGO loaded and one with CS2 loaded, and just alter the values of initial velocity applied and acceleration and deceleration in CS2 until it feels as close as possible to CSGO. This problem really shouldn't be that difficult to fix. Now before people go in the comments, but that would change nades and a million other things and blah 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 blah, I don't care. We will relearn the nades, bugs can be fixed, it will be fine. What I do care about is the movement being good. And going back to that Gabe clip from before, I care about the game being responsive to my actions. In CS2, the slow movement means that it always takes a moment longer than it did in Go to do anything, and it feels so much worse when you're just running around the map.
This I'm very interested in.
Let's talk about weapon accuracy. There are two things I'm going to touch on here, movement inaccuracy and bullet variance. Let's start with movement inaccuracy.
I'm gonna be video editing nerd here and be a little bit technical here for a moment. This would look way better if he made the font a little bit smaller so that the gap between the A and the C didn't, or so that the gap between the A and the C was lined up with the edge of the box, because right here, when the T walks here, the A is cut in half. So if he moved this slightly to the left, then he would just walk in between the A and the C and it would look way better.
Let's talk about weapon accuracy. There are two things I'm going to touch on here, movement inaccuracy and bullet variance. Let's start with movement inaccuracy. My problem is specifically the inaccuracy applied when moving being too low. Oh wait, there's a problem. Running accuracy being too high might just be a symptom of the slow movement acceleration, because the amount of inaccuracy applied is directly related to how fast you're moving. In CS, the inaccuracy applied is proportional with the velocity of the player. So if you're only moving slow, you'll only get a small amount of inaccuracy applied. If you're moving quickly, you'll get a higher amount of inaccuracy. So that lower initial velocity makes that AD on the spot while spraying much better than it was in Go, because you spend a longer time at a lower velocity being more accurate whilst making yourself harder to hit. So in CSGO, when played most efficiently, players would stop completely and take their shots. That was meta.
You would crouch walk
move mid-spray, but it was way less common.
You would crouch walk while spraying.
That was commonly done mid-spray was crouch walking or crouching up and down to move your head hitbox.
Yeah.
Better aim, positioning, and spray skills mattered the most.
Man, this game was so much better, bro.
Sprayed on multiple enemies. In CS2, when played most efficiently, you aren't stopping nearly as much to rely solely on your aim like you would in CSGO. It's much more important to stay on the move.
That's a crazy deagle clip, by the way.
They accept that they're not going to be as accurate, except for the instance where they're counter-strafing.
And that's a problem, because like in CS2, I swear, gunfights at a high level has become, I would say in CS2, it was like 95 to 5, where 95 was hitting your enemy first and 5 was evading being hit. You never went for evading being hit. It was in extreme niche scenarios, you went for being evasive. In CS2, I feel like it's 70-30, 80-20, where being evasive is as important as trying to hit your enemy. Because you would rather make your enemy miss and then re-peek them. Which to me is a big problem when you have a crisp competitive shooter like Counter-Strike.
Whereas in CSGO, you'd spray on the spot or crouching.
Fuck me, bro. Nico was such a different beast in CSGO.
You'd spray on the spot or crouching with every...
People don't understand how good Nico is. And Nico was so good in Go. He was dropping HLTV top 3 player ratings. And he was the only player in the top 4 that wasn't an AWPer, right? It was Nico on the rifle, and it was everyone else on the AWP that was putting in the same numbers. And the AWP was so much stronger in CSGO with its 10 bullets and its much less peekers advantage than in CS2. Less like inaccuracy bullshit with the aim punch and shit like that. Bro, it is unbelievable, bro, how good this guy was in CSGO. He never got his flowers properly, I feel like.
Every bullet potentially accurate enough to land a headshot. In CS2,
fucking monster.
Spraying whilst you're moving more. And you're accepting that not every bullet has the accuracy or reliability that it would have if you'd stopped completely and just sprayed. Because being harder to hit is more important in CS2 relative to how accurate you are whilst moving. This makes the game more random.
I swear to God, I haven't pre-watched this video. I'm just saying. These are the problems that the pro players are also talking about, okay? These are the conversations we have with pro players when we're just chilling and we're talking with them.
Less about skill or accuracy, and generally less responsive. It straight up feels like gambling sometimes, and we've already got enough of that in CS. So maybe you are too accurate whilst moving in CS2, or maybe it just feels that way because of how bad the movement is, along with some other issues I'm going to get to soon. Now, I'll put a pin in this issue of how CS2 plays on a micro level, and come back to it, because right now we don't have a full picture of all the problems in CS2.
Okay.
And once we do, I can fully explain all of their effects on how CS2 plays. Okay, let's talk about bullet variance. So for anyone unfamiliar, every bullet in CS has an inherent randomness to it.
Yep.
Not every shot goes to the same location, even when you're completely still.
As an example, do you guys remember when Na'Vi was on their fucking generational tear back in 2025? There's this clip where JL wins a 1v3 on Dust 2, and he swings long and he one-taps, I believe it's Shiro, in B slope on Dust 2. That one-tap is luck, because the bullet variance from long to Dust 2 makes the AK in donk. Oh, it was donk? Okay. Yeah, he one-taps donk in B-slope. That one-tap is partly luck, because the bullet variance from that distance is so big that inside his crosshair, the bullet might miss. So what's the correct play to do there is to 2-tap or even 3-tap, because then you counteract the variance and it's more likely that one of those 3 bullets hit. But he just went for the 1-tap and it landed, so it looks unbelievably hype. But like the correct thing to do, quote unquote, is to go for 3 bullets.
This was in CSGO as well. CS2 is more random in terms of bullet variance. You can tell from the first bullet accuracy being off way too often, as well as a couple other things I won't get into yet. But I have seen multiple streamers and pros talk about first bullet accuracy feeling off, and I found one example here on a podcast called Talking Counter.
How's spray transfers?
Not as good as Go, I feel like.
Yeah,
still.
well that's
it's still there.
I feel like
Not even close.
first bullet accuracy also feels wonky sometimes.
Do you guys remember when we did the CSGO viewer games for the first time for a long time ago? And on Overpass Banana, I did a spray transfer from toilet to A site on like some of my first bullets, and I was just like, fuck me, bro. Like, this is crazy.
Okay. Well, I'm watching some people and they're like not even counter strafing. I don't know, what am I watching?
But other than that, you'll just have to take my word that I've heard it mentioned more than a few times, and I just couldn't find the clips.
I mean, it's
Fix
right.
this is pretty simple though. Just lower the value in the back end for bullet variance. Or better yet, maybe even get rid of it altogether. Even if it is technically the same value on the back end as it was in CSGO, it clearly isn't representing the same across the different engines.
I can't lie, I think I'm fine with bullet variance, but I would prefer bullet variance to start after a certain distance, for it to be completely inactive until you reach a certain distance. Which it kind of already is, if you understand how that works with the spread. But I just think it would make the game feel better if more times when you had someone dead center in your crosshair, that you just got the headshot, no questions asked.
And in a game where people are craving more accuracy and responsiveness because the game feels unpredictable, reducing or getting rid of bullet variance would be an easy way to make the game feel better immediately.
I agree, but the problem is how it would incentivize new playstyles like holding long on overpass with an AK. Because you can just tap people from super far away and you know the bullet hits. I think that's a problem in and of itself. And I don't think it should be like that. I think that's too extreme. But bringing it down, probably a good idea, yeah.
And it's my belief, baseless claims of course, that one of the reasons spray still feels worse than it did in Go is because of the bullet variance. When you're spraying, each bullet is information you can use to adjust your spray, but when the individual variance applied to each bullet is so high that the information gets clouded, it's much harder to adjust because you're just getting worse information throughout.
I don't think that has anything to do with how the sprays feel. I think the sprays feel bad because, one, it's unclear when you hit someone and you don't get the same amount of like blood feedback, the same amount of hit feedback as you did in CSGO, even though we have more tracers now. And I think the camera shake really messed us up. I think those two are the things that makes the sprays feel so bad.
The spray. My main reason for thinking this is because spraying in CS2, whilst completely stopped with no spread on, feels great, meaning that without bullet variance, spraying in CS2 is actually much better. Moving on to the next problem.
Interesting.
Grenades.
Okay, maybe it's right then.
These are pretty simple problems at the end of the day, but I've not seen many people talking about them. The first is that flashbangs are just different in CS2. They deafen you completely. You can't hear a thing if you're even remotely near a flashbang. In CSGO, it was a skill to be able to identify what was going on where to shoot and move whilst you are blind.
I agree. Also, the language of the grenades in CS2, like, again, we spoke about before about the design language of the maps. Let me give you another example. The design language of when a grenade pops and when it doesn't is not that good. Here is a recent short I made that has got people saying I have anti-flash cheats. No fucking end to the LARP chat. Look at this. But here's why. You see this white flash of the flashbang going by? Bang. You see this? You can see the white flash of the flashbang. I timed that swing perfectly, right? And it got people in this comment section saying they think I have anti-flash cheats. And then you have the second flash here. You see how I turn into the flash? I do the same thing on my ramp flashes. I'm turning into it as it pops. Because I've realized as I've been playing that there's this one thing with, like, you can time the frame of where you're looking when, and it will not blind you even though you are looking in the general direction of the flash. I've figured this shit out. And it's bad. It's bad, the design language, in my opinion. Same thing.
That's just gone in CS2. You can't hear a thing. You can't even hear yourself if you're burning to death. And this just reduces player agency. It makes the game less responsive.
I agree.
Before someone in the comments again says, oh, well, it's a flashbang. It's meant to deafen you. Blah, blah, blah. Let me tap the sign.
That's not realistic. And you're like, okay.
1, it's not fun. 2, it makes the game less skill-based. 3, friendly flashes are worse now. Flashing for a friend, if it even clips them slightly, they won't be able to hear anything, which makes playing the game and identifying enemies' noise much more difficult. And if you don't completely dodge your own flash when you're self-flashing, it makes you not want to make a play because your sound's gone, making flashbangs for yourself feel way worse to use. To quickly give the devil's advocate for why this might be good, you might say, oh, buffing how flashbangs reduce senses is a good thing. They were too weak in CSGO because good people could just dodge the flashes, and it promotes team play and aggressive play. But that's just not true. Neither of those things end up being true. In CSGO, good pop flashes were undodgeable. It was a skill to know how to throw good flashbangs. If you threw a bad flash that was easily dodgeable, that's your fault. It was the skill of the other player to be able to dodge it. It was not easy. And the whole thing about it promoting team play is completely ruined by how it deafens anyone nearby. If I get clipped by a flashbang in CS2, I kinda don't want to keep going into whatever fight I was gonna do. Sometimes I will anyway, but the deafen thing...
I mean, the deafening thing and the sound denial is also why you would layer flashes in CSGO. The easiest example I can give is, you guys have seen me do this a million times, it's when my teammates are rushing B on Inferno, and I'll throw 2 flashes in succession over CT as my teammates are running in, because the flashes land behind my teammates, and it will blind, and they will deny sound, and it will blind, and it will deny sound. And while that's happening, they're running in with their backs turned to the flashes. And it's just cleaner.
Makes it much more difficult. The fix for this one is simple and easy. Remove the muffled effect from flashbangs. It would make the game much better immediately. Something I investigated when making this video was that I was going to make a point about how flashbangs clip you way more in CS2 compared to CSGO. But after testing that was just wrong. Or at least I couldn't test well enough to articulate the difference. I only felt that way because being clipped by a flashbang in CSGO felt like nothing. But in CS2 it deafens you, which just feels like a gut punch. So when I was researching flashbangs for this part of the video, I found this Subtick article which shows data that flashbangs are used less in CS2. And I think the reason for this is because getting deafened just generally makes the game unplayable, which makes me believe my conclusion that deafening players is such a huge problem that really does need to be fixed. The next problem with grenades is to do with how they're thrown. This isn't something I've seen other people complain about, but it does feel so much worse in my opinion.
I have complained about it since day one!
In CS2, there's always a delay before a grenade leaves your hand. This is so the game can check if you did a jump throw.
Since the game came out, yes, it's because of the jump throw check. Oh my fucking god, and I hate the devs for not just giving us a jump throw bind. Just give us a bind. You don't need Subtick to fix this. You don't. We fixed this. And I'll give an example. I will explain why, because I know that in the comment section, if I don't explain why, I will always have someone be like, oh, Ran, but there's no scenario where it's needed. Okay, I will give a very simple example. Because if you want to throw a grenade and then you want to jump up on a box, Sometimes the game will be like, oh, you wanted to jump through, huh? And it is very annoying. It is very, very annoying. Okay, chat, look at this. Look at. Here's an example, and I'm just gonna say this, like, just let it be a skill that good players have and bad players don't. If I want to throw a smoke CT, and I immediately want to jump up on that box, or I want to throw a flashbang here with double click, and I immediately want to jump up and then swing with it, guess what's gonna happen a lot of time? I'm gonna release, I'm gonna jump, now it's a jump throw, and then I swing with this. You know what I mean? Here's what I want to do. Flash, boom, now I jump, and now I might be too late, right? And the fact that they forced this to be a Subtick thing, it lowers the skill ceiling. You are taking away expression from the player who is able to differentiate between when these two things are useful and when they aren't. Here's another example. Here's one that I did a lot. If you guys don't know about this, there's a smoke here where you can just do a normal smoke throw and it will land in jungle. But sometimes, if you're in a clutch scenario, you want to throw this smoke really fast and then immediately jump up, right? So you're going to do a jump throw. When what you want to do is throw, boom, and now jump. And then you get to do this shit, and then the smoke lands, and then boom, timing. Now the CT is here, the smoke, and it's all rotating. You walk through it, whatever, right? The point is, why do I have to be 0.2, 0.3 milliseconds slower? Why do I have to miss a tiny timing because they can't let me have a jump throw? It is bad game design to punish me for being so good that I can exploit these very minute differences in timing. Because at the highest level, they do matter. But they're dumbing it down for the bottom amount of players instead of allowing the best players to differentiate themselves.
Your hand at the same point in the jump consistently. This was Valve's idea to remove jump throw binds, but there's one huge problem with that. It doesn't feel as good to throw them. The grenade throw is delayed, less responsive. It ends up feeling like you throw it from inside of your own chest. And just to make sure that the problem was a delay and not something I hadn't considered, I tested the difference in a rough manner, just to make sure I wasn't like imagining it. And it takes somewhere between 60 and 90 milliseconds longer on CS2 from the moment you release the mouse to when the grenade will appear on your screen. Those numbers are like extremely rough and not exact in any way. I could get a more accurate number if I recorded the footage a bit faster and I did more.
That looks so much
samples,
cleaner, by the way.
But it's really not important. What is important is that the delay is there and it feels really bad to play with. Throwing a grenade is something I do about 30 times a game, so I do think it's a big deal. The fix,
it is a big deal.
Move the delay from grenades being thrown.
If you guys play something like Inferno where you try to throw the molly down mid, and then you try to be visible for as little time as possible, so many times will you slam that molly into the wall compared to CSGO. Where in CSGO you could throw that molly perfectly 15 out of 15 rounds. It is awful. And it really makes the game feel awful.
Add back the jump throw bind. I loved it. It was a great addition to the game. Now to play the
and that's the game's fault.
This would be a bad thing. I'm not really sure. Something about it being a skill check that I've never failed, making the game more skill-based. Yeah, I don't really agree with this line of thinking at all.
No, not at all.
I miss lineups because I forget them, not
Horrible
because I failed
take.
the stupid jump throw timing grunt thing. If the game should feel worse to make it more skill-based, why not add in a requirement to solve a maths equation before you get to leave spawn? Would it be fun? No. Would it make sense? No. Would it be more skill-based? Yes, it would.
And I'm graph did not change the grenades
really
though.
Dumb to me. But maybe I'm just not seeing it clearly. The only other argument I can think of as to why the grenade shouldn't have a jump
Not the
throw
physics,
bind
at
is
least. Anything else, I don't
harder
know.
for new players, I guess, or at least it gives.
Oh my god, can someone link me the clip of Ime, by the way? I'm sorry for taking so many detours. Can someone link me the clip of Ime on Anubis, his last round? Does someone know what I'm talking about? The run and gun one, yes. Yeah, thank you. This is, for me, a perfect explanation of before. You know when we were talking before about how people want to be more evasive, and people are okay with running and gunning because it's better in CS2? Here's a perfect example. This loses Navi the round, and therefore the game. If this didn't happen. Do you see this shit? Look at this shit. This would never happen in CSGO. Because in CSGO, he would stop and counter-strafe. He wouldn't run and spray like this. This loses them the map in a grand final of a tier 1 event. It is absolutely awful.
Advantage to the advanced players that know how to use it. Well, new players don't know any jump throw lineups anyway, and why is rewarding skill a bad thing? It's still skill-based, just in a different way that's
Exactly.
fun. Not a stupid time your jump throw in the easiest minigame ever way. In a learn your lineups, get good at understanding.
It's not a
grenade
quick time
trajectories
event
kind of
for no
way.
reason at all.
Also, this might be hard to explain, but throwing grenades and jumping with the same key, which is separate from your original jump key, makes for a lot more mechanical freedom, because the fact that it releases the grenade instantly when you press the jump throw button instead of having to release a button press is key here. It's more responsive to press a button to throw a grenade rather than to release a button to throw a grenade.
Yes.
So it feels much better. You can instantly start moving your crosshair or player model after you've pressed your jump throw bind in CSGO. It makes you able to jump throw grenades and have fluid movements at the same time, which rewards players who are fluid in their actions between grenade throws. Whereas in CS2, there's that delay I mentioned. So throwing grenades not only takes longer, it prevents you from doing anything else for longer too. And that
I love this guy because he's saying all the shit I've been saying for 3 years. I just haven't been fucked to make a video about it.
a feeling of grenades taking longer to throw is made worse by, you guessed it, the slow movement. Because after you throw a grenade, getting moving again just takes longer than it would have in CSGO. I really do think this is an important thing to fix. Even if it seems minor to most people, I can see how this wouldn't bother 90% of the player base. But for nerds like me who like playing this game a lot, this is something that makes the game feel much worse. And that's just on the micro level of it feeling bad to throw them. The last point to make on this is that CS2 is less tactical because of things like this. Grenades are the basis of tactics in CS. That 100 millisecond delay for each grenade throw is significant. Making them take an extra 100 milliseconds to throw is a nerf that punishes tactics and promotes brainless wide swinging.
I wish he spoke about the stuff though, but
myself included, feel like the peak is advantage.
He definitely thought about it.
With the way movement works, if we get peeked onto, even if we react to move into cover and hide, or react with a simple counter strafe to shoot back at someone swinging on you, the slow movement acceleration means that your counter strafe will happen slower than it would have in CSGO. So reactive play in general is worse because reacting in CS2 just takes longer, and holding angles is.
It's also why you see all the pros and all the high elo players now just like jiggle on corners, perma jiggling on corners over and over and over again instead of just standing still holding an angle. It's because you don't ever want to be stationary. You want to be moving into the angle at all times, all the time. Yeah, it's why everyone's doing the permanent XDDing non-stop.
Longer, and holding angles is all about being reactive. AnimGraph 2 has made the models a lot easier to read, but when it comes to holding angles and peak as advantage, I think people are overreacting just a bit, because the models are still slower to stop than they were in CSGO. The actual gameplay hasn't changed, just how it looks. So I'm going to describe in exact terms how micro has changed from CSGO to CS2 to fully explain the difference of CS2 micro compared to CSGO. And I think the best way to do that is to go through the meta differences and reverse engineer them. I'm going to go over peaks, spray downs, and tight peaks. Starting with peaking and holding angles, you would get peaked, and if everyone had good ping, they'd counter strafe and try and shoot you. They'd fully stop, and you'd have to shoot a stationary target. Predicting where they were going to peak you exactly with good crosshair placement was really important. I mean, look at this clip where I get owned because my crosshair placement was just slightly off. I still get a chance to shoot. I should have hit the shot. It was a fair engagement where better aim won the gunfight. Now, let's look at CS2, where you have to either jiggle on the spot constantly or just look for timings and hide. You have to be constantly moving generally because your opponent doesn't need to stop fully to shoot you, making holding angles in CS2 way weaker. The difference that causes this is because of that initial velocity.
Makes AWPing way weaker.
First key press being so much lower. The crux of it comes down to the fact that CS2 is about constantly moving. So CS2 is all about staying moving, where the person running always has the advantage. Moving on though, CS2 has many less spray downs, because in CSGO you stop on the spot, crouch walk, and spray your whole mag. This
is so much more hype though!
Stops and counter strafes to shoot at you is at a disadvantage. They become a still target, and anyone who is moving and making themselves difficult to hit can't shoot back at you accurately. Compare that to CS2, where everyone's going to be moving like crazy and still shooting back. Spraying down 4 people who don't move versus 4 people ADing on the spot, crouching, bobbing up and down. I think it's obvious which is easier. The last thing to touch on here is about tight peaks. So tight peaks in CS2 aren't viable at all, not really. Tight peaks are something in CSGO that required tight mechanics and precise spatial thinking for perfect crosshair placement. I think of Nico, I think of Robs, who mastered this. If you tight peak in CSGO, you can go from a high velocity to a velocity of 0 almost instantly, making tight peaks very effective if you have the aim and crosshair placement to back them up. Quick side note, tight peak was the AWP's bread and butter in CSGO, and I think it's a big part of why the AWP is worse now in CS2. If you tight peak in CS2, you go from a high velocity to 0 velocity comparatively slowly. So those tight peaks aren't very quick, and you'll just be an easy target compared to a wide swing, or even compared to someone who holds angles whilst jiggling. Now, to summarize all of what I just
I have a question. Is there a chance that the floaty feeling of the deceleration is because of the slower initial acceleration? I actually have no idea. I'm wondering.
That about micro. Initial velocity being lower is bad. It makes moving and run and gun way too effective in
Is that
CS2,
already? No?
And it's the main reason for CS2's difference.
I figured. I just wasn't sure if I was understanding that right. But I mean, it makes sense, right? It makes sense.
Differences at the micro level. A simple value change to the initial velocity, and CS2 will feel incredible. I am convinced of this. It is the single most important thing I brought up in this video. If Valve only fix one thing I bring up, I hope to God that it's this.
Oh.
The next thing I want to talk about is to do with game feel, things like visual and auditory feedback, because I've heard the line CSGO feels better, visual and auditory feedback, because I've heard the line CSGO feels better a lot. So I thought I'd break down some of the differences or changes that could be made so that CS2 starts feeling better to play. And let's start with the bullet holes and traces. There was a spray update as I was making this, and it's a really good update and spraying feels way better, but my feedback in this section is still valid. I'll be using pre-update sprays compared to Go in this section, but what I critique hasn't really changed in-game. And here's a comparison of spraying before and after the update, just to show the only difference is that smoother camera, and that nothing I'll talk about has really changed in-game. Back to the video. CS2 is a very bright game compared to CSGO, which is cool. I was boosting vibrance and brightness in CSGO anyway, but the problem is that traces aren't brighter in CS2 compared to CSGO. They're about the same, so they end up looking invisible sometimes, fading into the brighter backgrounds. So I would just make traces more defined lines that are easier to see. As for
that is honestly
holes,
good feedback.
They have almost the opposite problem. In CSGO, bullet holes were a very simple glow on the wall. In CS2, they look like this, very cluttered, and they're dynamic instead of the static glow that was in CSGO. So it's much harder to read where your bullet went because tracking the glow that's static is much easier compared to tracking where this dynamic animation last took place. CSGO's bullet holes stay visible until the next shot is fired and the next bullet hole appears. In CS2, the bullet holes vanish completely before the next bullet hole appears. It breaks that continuity. And sure, the animation of the bullet hitting the wall is more realistic.
Okay.
Or maybe you think it looks cooler, but it doesn't help gameplay. When I have to track 10
Good little
beats a
callback.
second, I think the fact that it's moving around is a big deal. And I don't think it's a good idea. Fixing this is obviously super easy. Just make bullet holes glow a little bit longer, so there's always going to be a glowing hole where your last bullet went, so you can keep that continuity and keep track of where your bullets are. Because the game just isn't giving you reliable or obvious visual feedback as to where your bullets do go. And honestly, just get rid of that animation. Just make it a glowy hole. That worked perfectly. Maybe just making the bullet hole last longer will be enough, and the animation won't be that much of a distraction.
So my takeaway from this video is just give us CSGO back.
But I don't think the animation is good for gameplay, and I'd
So
rather
far?
see it gone because to me it's just visual clutter. So, I went into aimbots and I shot some bots. I did it in CSGO and CS2, and here's what I noticed. To get it out of the way, there's nothing wrong with headshots, those are fine. And that thud noise when you get a kill, sure, that works. As for what doesn't work, let's start with blood for the blood god. In CS2, the blood effects are just scuffed. There's no other way of saying it.
No, there is no other way of saying
it.
it.
The blood is completely non-specific. It doesn't tell you where you hit them at all, really. No matter where you do hit them, the blood will just spray out in a random direction in a vaguely similar place to where you shot them. Okay, well, how was it in CSGO? So, in CSGO, the blood effect came out of the bullet hole, shockingly. And not only did the blood come out
So
of
much
the
better,
bullet
bro.
hole, specifically where you shot them, more also came out. And it was a much clearer and darker color
So
that
much better,
contrasted
bro.
the surroundings. And it also lingered in the air for a moment, so whenever you shot someone, you know exactly where, because the blood would linger in the air in the spot that you hit them. Fixing this isn't as easy as changing some values like it would be for movement, grenades, and a bunch of other things I mentioned, but it's still not a very difficult task.
It's just not even close to as
Fixing
good.
this should be easy enough. Just make the blood darker, increase the amount that appears, make it linger in the air when you shoot, and make it come out of the bullet hole rather than shooting off in a random direction from somewhere on the model's body. This is simple stuff that I almost feel stupid saying out loud. Next thing is to tackle the sounds. So CS2 has different sounds for hitting someone, and for just firing when you don't hit someone. It's also mixed slightly differently. Let's just compare real quick. Here's bodying someone with armor in CSGO, and here's bodying someone with armor in CS2.
There's just nothing, right?
And that's up close, where the sound will be the loudest and most obvious. It gets much harder to distinguish if you hit them in CS2 at a further distance. And the sound is a lower frequency one than it was in Go, which humans generally have a much harder time picking out than higher pitched sounds. And it's also much quieter relative to the AK's regular firing sound in CS2. This is a mixing problem and a pitch problem. The sound for hitting someone needs to be pitched up so it's higher pitch, and the mixing needs to change so it's louder relative to the sound of the AK. Next up, I want to talk about the big green, which is significantly worse in CS2, which is something everyone seems to agree on, but no one really gets into the why very often. So let's list some of the reasons. Blood lingering in the air in CSGO is probably one of the reasons why AWPing feels worse in CS2, because if you shoot someone with the AWP, you won't get that instant feedback of blood appearing where you shot, which you did get in CSGO. So it can be hard to tell when you've
Not sure I agree with this take.
Peak is advantage, meaning holding angles as well.
This is more of a problem.
Tight peaks are worse because of the slow movement acceleration, which is the AWP's specialty. Bullet variance being higher severely hurts a weapon that relies on pinpoint accuracy. Models are harder to hit in CS2, which severely hurts the single shot of the AWP. Netcode being worse makes gap or pixel angle shots much more difficult to hit. Repositioning after a shot is much slower because of the movement acceleration, meaning if you miss, you're probably dead. And
that is probably the big one.
I probably haven't considered. You know,
this and the peak disadvantage is probably the big one. Those is probably the big ones.
Things like MR12 or the economy or the general meta of the game. So it's pretty safe to say the AWP is much worse than it was in Go, which is a damn shame because I love the AWP. It's iconic. I love AWPing, just not in CS2. I love it in CSGO. So how do we fix it? Well, fixing all the problems I mentioned before this section would probably be a good first step because technically, there's probably no difference between the CSGO AWP and the CS2 AWP. It's the surroundings that are different. But let's do a rapid fire round of the last complaints with CS2 that I have before I get into the real meat of the issue here. 1. The server browser. It should really be in game. Bonus points if it has a function where you can search by game mode.
3 years.
Similar to what's
3
in
years.
Gary's mod.
3 years, by the way.
Content. In this article, you said that Source 2 would help you support CS for years to come, and that you plan to reintroduce popular game modes back into the game.
3 years.
It's been 3 years, and I agree that core gameplay is more important, but the rate of improvement on that core gameplay is not nearly fast enough in my opinion. My point is just that this rate of improvement is just so incredibly slow. 3. Skins look worse because of the brightness of the game. They end up looking washed out. This is
Give me my Blacky Mob back!
Because I just want my Nightwish to look better like it did in CSGO.
I want my Blacky Mob to be black again, bro.
That boosts the contrast on weapons slightly. You can even make it a toggleable option in the settings for people who prefer to not have
fuck
it.
yeah.
And screw it, go the whole 9 and add a toggleable slider that lets people adjust the contrast on their skins.
Yes!
4. Loadout.
Let me.
Why not just make it bigger? Not being able to equip the auto sniper in 1 out of 100 games that I would have used it in makes the game less fun.
I don't get the loadout either. We've always had the buy menu where you could have all the weapons in the game and you could buy whatever the fuck you wanted. I've never understood the need for this. Never.
No reason. Why limit gun choices? I don't see how that makes the game more fun.
No.
That's all my feedback. And it might sound like I hate CS2. And I don't. I really don't. It's still probably like a top 10 game that I've ever played. I have fun playing it most of the time. Just not as much as when I played CSGO. Okay.
Same.
Time for the rant. Just to be clear, I'm ranting about actions and decisions, not people. So screw it. Let's get this over with. Going through this video, figuring out the problems with this game, none of my conclusions were difficult to come to. None of them rested on extreme testing or intricate problem solving. You can argue that I relied on my 5,000 hours playing the game and more watching the pro scene, but I was just solving game development problems here. Something I have a bit of experience in, but not even close to the amount that a Valve dev should have. Finding the problems were easy. I just did the actions in both games and compared. 90% of the fixes for the problems were changing a value in the back end, and the last 10% that weren't massively work intensive either. At least not 3 years of work intensive. So why weren't these things fixed? I can't believe Valve devs are just too stupid to fix them. I can't believe that. And I also can't believe there just isn't enough people working on it. That doesn't make any sense either. So
and even if there's not enough people working on it, the game is making 100 million a month. It's making 100 million a month. Surely you can just hire more people. It's not like everyone in the world is incompetent or too incompetent to work on this game. I mean, fuck, no one competent has worked on it until recently, clearly. So like what are we doing?
What? There's only one conclusion I logically came to, and I don't like it. It's that this is how they
like what are we doing, bro? I don't get it.
Floaty movement, with delayed nades, with less customization, that's less tactical and more run and gun. That's the only conclusion I can possibly come to. They like the run and gun, the aspect we used to make fun of. It was a literal joke in the CS community, and now it's just how the game is. If there's a different reason why movement, shooting, and holding angles still have such massive problems, I would very much like to know it. Because currently I have to assume they have some strange idea of how CS should be, something that's more aggressive, less tactical, and more noob friendly. And you know what, maybe that would be fine. There's nothing wrong with making a different kind of game to CSGO, if CS2 was a separate game, but it's not. It's a replacement that has removed CSGO. There aren't any CSGO MM servers anymore. I know it's free to play now, but I bought CSGO. Don't give me a different game to what I purchased. Let's tackle the more controversial sides. And no, I don't mean cheaters.
Fair enough.
Whilst the game does have a lot of cheaters, I don't have any way to fix the cheating problem, so I don't personally have anything to say about them. I'm sure Valve knows cheating is a big problem, and they'll just work on it eventually. What I want to talk about is tick rate. So Subtick is not the issue as far as I can tell. It gets a lot of shit, but that's mainly because of the marketing and the insane perception that it's enough to replace 128 tick, which it clearly isn't. Let me explain what I understand Subtick to be, so you can understand where I'm coming from. And take this with a grain of salt, because whilst I do have a decent amount of programming experience, I only have a cursory understanding of netcode, and I've never actually written netcode before. So Subtick, as I understand it, informs the server at what point in between ticks an action occurred. Then on each tick, it retcons the game state to make it so that action had have occurred on that state in between ticks. So it is very much not beyond the tick rate. It never could be, because every server works on ticks, so it's still a 64 tick server at the end of the day. The game can only give you responses to the game state 64 times a second. No matter what you do, you'll get responses at half the rate you would have in a 128 tick server. And funnily enough, Valve agree with me that 64 tick isn't sufficient. I know they do. That's why they made damage prediction, so it could theoretically respond quicker than the server would allow. The denial of 128 tick feels like a multi-year long joke at this point, and no, damage prediction does not work, even in perfect conditions where both people have good ping, and I've thoroughly tried it, so trust me on this. It just adds an element of...
Even on LAN, it doesn't work. Even on LAN, I've been told by pros that they are getting fake kills and fake dinks. Even on LAN.
Unreliability and unresponsiveness to the game, because you can take an extra half second on every kill, continue in spraying because you aren't sure if you landed a headshot. You end up feeling like you're just up against Ultra Instinct Goku teleporting mid gunfight. So if Valve knows that 64 tick isn't enough, why? Why deny it from us? Right, look at this clip.
I believe the reasoning was always, if we enforce higher tick rate, then people on worse computers are unable to play. And I'm sorry, but what? What are we saying?
This is really telling, I think, as to what the Valve devs think about this whole thing.
I believe that was the reasoning. I can be wrong, though. I might be wrong.
We have 128 tick sub-tick servers, guys. Like, because I was thinking about it. If I was still a player at the top level and not, like, talking to Valve and being understanding to why they make those changes, I'd be pretty miffed about it. Because, like, it doesn't... We had, for the longest time, we had 128 tick servers. And then they've gone, okay, well, we don't want the player at home in matchmaking to have a different experience to what they're having on the highest level when they brought out CS2. And like one of the factors there was obviously like nades. But you had players like, if you're playing Counter-Strike all the time as your profession, you could literally tell the difference between spraying your gun on 64 tick versus 128 tick. Or like movement.
Huge difference.
Right? Like you can tell. And it's like now we don't have a choice because like I think Faceit made 128 tick sub-tick servers in the start and Valve said fuck off, right? I don't know. That's obviously not what they said. But you know, they didn't like the fact that Faceit did that. And then we've kind of just accepted it because we don't have a choice. Like Valve are just enforcing it and they'll go from the angle of, yeah, but the majority of our users can't have 128 tick servers because their PCs are dog shit.
Yeah, like, you see what I mean? This is what I believe I heard as well. This is what I believe was said before. And like, what are we doing? Like, surely that's a joke, no?
10 years ago, that statement. So.
But that probably still is true. It probably still is true when you're talking like 1.8 million players. Like most of them don't.
Do we even think like 128? Does that even make a difference on the? I don't think that makes a difference on the performance.
Well, I don't know, but that's the reason they'd go for, right? But here's the thing: it's like, why? When we think about this, Counter-Strike over the longest period of time, from its infancy, it was a modification, and then only since CS:GO came out was there ever like something built into the game that people could like play as matchmaking. Before that, if you wanted to play, you'd play like community servers. Everything was a community server in Source, and everything was a community server in 1.6 and CZ. Only with CS:GO did that change, and then now we're at like the top end of Counter-Strike, and they've come in and they've done a lot for the scene, right? Like obviously the majors and the sticker money and everything like that, it really helps an awful lot, but why at the top end can we not have 128 tick Subtick servers? I don't care what the guy that plays matchmaking on a Friday night with his friends is playing on. I don't give a single fuck. Like, we're talking high-end elite tier Counter-Strike. I want to play on what's the best. And if we can actually do it and we can play matches on LAN or on Faceit or whatever, why are we suffering and having a worse experience because some guy plays on a fucking Pentium 4?
That's a second-hand source, so take it with a grain of salt, obviously. And whilst it feels kind of bad getting all my information on Valve's intentions from Sponge, who isn't Valve and obviously doesn't speak for them, I have literally nowhere else to get information on Valve's thoughts from. So I'm just going to go with what Sponge says here. So there are two
I think Sponge is right, though. Sponge is right, though.
Maybe Valve have more reasons. I'll never know because I'm working with incomplete information. But let's tackle both the reasons that are given. 1. The PCs are just too bad to handle 128 tick servers in CS2. Okay, but that's not a reason to deny it from the pro scene or from Faceit. I'm sorry, but if you really cared about PC performance being too low on CS2, I want to promise you that it's just been much worse in CS2 this whole time anyway. Stuttering and much lower FPS have been a consistent problem for people in CS2 compared to Go. So we have that problem anyway. It's not a real reason to ban tick rate changing outright, because a large portion of the player base have PCs good enough to run 128 tick servers, as far as my limited knowledge of this problem goes. Which brings me to the other reason. You don't want to give a different experience to the player at home compared to the highest level? I have a lot to say on this one. Let's start with the connection between those 2 points, right? If you're playing a pug on Valve servers, you are never going to have the same gameplay experience no matter what rank you are playing. The pro game is fundamentally different. Set roles, mechanical flaw, which plays work, even the attitudes of the people in the server.
I mean, there's no reason to deny it from... For the few people that actually tried this, right? For the few people that actually tried to play 128 tick, on Faceit, when we had 128 tick Faceit CS2, it felt much better. And then they decided to deny that. Then they just decided out of the blue to deny that.
10 of the best players in the world is not the same as a top tier pro match. So the idea that the only thing stopping someone who runs the game at 60 FPS from having the same gameplay experience would have been the tick rate difference causing slight differences in nades or occasional FPS stutters because their PC can't handle 128 tick, that's just ridiculous. And no, the noob at home is not watching Zyru throw a smoke and then copying it. I've been playing CS since 2018, and even at level 10 Faceit, people still don't know basic smokes. People being unable to learn smokes because of tick rate differences is not a major problem. Shitty gunplay and unresponsive fights is a major problem. Genuinely, I must be missing something, because sacrificing gunplay so Timmy at home can learn a stairs smoke from watching a pro game, that is an insane choice to make. I'm not even arguing about server costs either, which, cough cough, it would be entirely reasonable if I was. I'm just arguing about the denial to change tick rate. Let us choose which tick rate to play on, and let me once again explain how absurd the idea is that everyone should have the same gameplay experience. You can't play differently. Just play only the 5v5 mode and only wide swing. Same tick rate for everyone. Different game modes had different tick rates that suited them. Surfers, KZ players, B-Hop players, casual players, Faceit players, all of them had different tick rates that suited them. 64 tick was fine for casual.
I think it's a problem that they keep taking shit away under the guise of making it accessible or whatever, under the guise of evening the playing field, under the guise of making it the same for everyone, and then it just gives us less choices and a worse product. It lowers the skill ceiling. It takes away the ability to like perform at the highest level for those who have honed themselves enough to be able to get there. It's a really big problem.
28 tick suits competitive play much more. The different movement game modes used weird tick rates, and even within just Surf, I know they used a different tick rate for casual Surf compared to competitive Surf. So the idea that nope, 64 tick for everyone, just why? It doesn't make any sense. And if 128 tick really is a worse experience, you could just let the community decide that. Why ban us from trying? You just let us try it, then we test it and decide for ourselves. And even to throw Valve another bone, my understanding of AnimGraph 2 is that it will lessen network loads and potentially lessen CPU burdens. So maybe now, the theoretical problems with 128 tick aren't as much of a problem with AnimGraph 2. The last thing is that lessened customization. It's clear from the removed alias binds, the removed jump throw, no bob, no left hand right hand for a long time. that Valve want the game to be more similar across different players' games. But it seems to me like Valve devs hate the idea of player customization and player choice. I've never seen a single person complain, oh, this game is way too customizable. I've seen plenty of people who enjoy customizing their game. So why they lean towards this less difference between players' way of thinking, I just have no clue. I have more complaints about CS2 than have gone in this video, but I've tried to keep it to the ones that were more important. Now when I step back and look at the big picture of Valve's decisions, a game where everyone plays on the same tick rate, where no one's game is too differently customized from another, where the game's even fairer for everyone because there's no partner system in the pro scene, where it's more about aggression and slightly more random, where the movement is floatier and more about wide swinging than precision, where tactical play isn't rewarded and aggressive brainless plays are, all making it way more noob friendly. That sounds fine on paper, but it's just not CSGO. And it never will be, if this is the idea they're going for. CSGO was an incredibly tactical, hard...
And it's fine to want to make a different game. That's okay. But that's not what we're doing. We're just making a worse game. That's all that it really is at the end of the day. I don't want to pretend that they are making these choices consciously, because they're clearly not, because they're redoing most of them. Most of these like problems and mechanics that we've been complaining about since release have been fixed or attempted to be fixed, right? And I don't know what they're doing, bro.
Hardcore competitive game that didn't hold your hand, that also had alternative game modes that were incredibly fun. CSGO was tactical and rewarded precision, but you could always overcome tactics with raw mechanics if you were good enough. In CS2, the opposite feels true, where you need incredible tactics to overcome regular mechanics, which just makes the game all around more simple and, in my opinion, a bit more boring. If CS2 is going to be a different game, considering CSGO is just gone in terms of its servers, that would kind of suck, because I bought CSGO and it's my favorite game ever. Okay, that's the rant over. So in my perfect world to fix CS2, what do Valve do? A mea culpa. Go back on the 128 tick denial, fix the movement, fix the visual and audio feedback, remove the nade delay, add in a jump throw bind. There would be a large amount of bugs, nades would need to be relearned, but ultimately, I think we would come out the other side with a much better game. So Valve, please fix. Thanks so much for watching.
Good ass video. Good ass video. What other content does he make? Complete Mirage Guide CS2, complete entry fragging CS2. This isn't my cup of tea, chat, personally, the other content, but this was a good fucking video. I'm gonna link the channel. Go drop him a sub. Go drop him some likes, go drop him some subs. I see he just got 40 subs out of our little watch party here. That makes me happy.
CS.
If you haven't subbed to him and you like this video, make sure you do give him a sub so we can help support a small and up-and-coming YouTuber. That's always nice. Good ass video. Nice way to kill an hour and 15 minutes.